Vacancy, vacant, vacantly, vacate, vacation. Today, we're talking about V for Vendetta.
Very awesome.
Was that ridiculous? Because he does that whole fucking scene with all the stupid V words. I picked 5 of them because 5 Roman numerals V.
Oh man, he had more than that.
He did, but I only picked 5 because
we'd be here all day.
We would be here all day. Hey, what's up, you guys? Imperial Nick here, and today we're talking about V for Vendetta. I have my notebook here, and
I'm Lumberjack Nick.
We're going to go over some cool, interesting facts about V for Vendetta. We're going to talk about the movie and why we love it. Again, just like Sucker Punch video from last week, we're not going to review it. It's a good movie. So really, I only have 3 characters in this one. I know in Sucker Punch video, we went over like 6 different characters, their importance. There's really only 3 big characters in V for Vendetta. The Inspector's important, but he's not that important, and all the other characters are kind of sidelined. What I think is interesting is these 3 characters, they carry the movie. Even Stephen Fry didn't. And that is Evie, and she's played by Natalie Portman. And Natalie Portman was perfect for this role because of Leon the Professional, Garden State. Have you seen Garden State? It's a great movie. Zach Braff directed it.
Nice.
And Mars Attacks.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not mentioning Star Wars movies because I hate Star Wars. V is played by Hugo Weaving, who played the elf in Lord of the Rings. I'm not going to say his name because I won't say it right and you guys will get mad at me. He was in the Matrix trilogy. He played Agent Smith.
Oh. Yeah.
So, and he also played Megatron.
Oh.
In Transformers. He did the voice for Megatron.
Nice. I didn't know that.
And then the main bad guy, who is Adam Sutler, played by John Hunt. In the cartoon version of Lord of the Rings, he did Aragorn. He played in Hellboy. He was in the movie Dead Man, which I'm going to put a gif of that up because that's the best Johnny Depp movie ever made. And he also played the War Doctor in Doctor Who. Now, before I go into that last movie with him, I want to bring up the importance of the duality between those 2 characters and the actors they chose to pick them. So Hugo Weaving has played both the bad guy and the good guy in different movies. You know, he has a reputation of being able to play either or. V in the movie isn't necessarily a good guy. Yeah. He's not necessarily a bad guy. What he does to Natalie Portman is absolute proof of that. So V isn't necessarily a good guy, but he isn't necessarily a bad guy. I wouldn't even call him an anti-hero.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, his motivations are strictly revenge. It's not to free the people. It's not to free Britain. It's revenge. So having that past of an actor playing both good guys and bad guys, he's able to play the good guy where he needs to play the good guy and play the bad guy where he needs to. Whereas with John Hunt also has a history of playing good guys and bad guys. He played Jesus Christ in History of the World Part 1, and he played the War Doctor in Doctor Who. And the War Doctor, I think, is super important to this because of that duality that we see with Hugo Weaving's character. He's not necessarily good, he's not necessarily evil. And they're dueling each other. I think the most interesting role of John Hunt for this is 1984. Where he played someone being oppressed by the state, and in this movie, he plays the High Chancellor.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just interesting because it always just makes me think of all the signs that say, obey.
Yeah, it definitely does a really good job of selling, like, the whole, like, overpowering government, and that's one of the things that I noticed, like, right away in the movie is, you know, like, there's a lot of red and black used, like, so the colors for the state or whatever are red and black, and every time you see the High Chancellor talk, like, there's huge red and black on the sides and like their badges and like all of the different like propaganda that's out and everything. It's all like red and black. It looks like very, I mean, I guess Nazi, and, you know, kind of gives you that thought, like that vibe. And colors are used for all of those characters to show, you know, like, you don't necessarily know, but you're like, this is the bad guy, this is the good guy subconsciously because of just the colors. Like, they don't even have to tell you.
And I feel like with Hugo Weaving's character, that duality is shown. Black cloak, white mask.
Yeah, and there's something really interesting about that we'll talk about later.
We'll definitely have to get to that. And then the black and red reminds me of the Hammers from Pink Floyd The Wall.
So another thing that I thought was really interesting was the way that a lot of cinematography tricks were used in the movie. You notice this right from the beginning of the movie. So you have Natalie Portman's character getting ready, and then you have V getting ready. There's a trick used to make you know that they're getting ready at the same time because there's a TV on in the background for both of them. And it's both playing the same TV broadcast. So in the beginning of the movie, the characters aren't together, but they're linked, and like it cuts back and forth between them. But you know that the characters are linked, and it's telling you that they're eventually going to meet up because they're getting ready to go out at the same time.
A little bit of that foreshadowing.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of know that when he goes out and gets on the street and the bad cops come and
the fingermen.
Yeah, the fingermen. Like, you have a pretty good idea already that V's going to show up because they were getting ready to go out at the same time. I thought that was really interesting, and that's used throughout the movie. So they'll use like something that you would know, and it's simple, like as a TV broadcast or radio broadcast where they can link all these scenes together. And they do that when the V's first broadcast is happening and you see all the people like all over the city are there at the same time. So you see, like there's a family with their little kid, and that's interesting because the little kid gets really involved and is like super entranced in it. And then, like you see people in a bar, and you see the police when they're trying to break into the TV station. Like, you can see that all of that is all happening at the same time. And it's a really clever way to make the entire thing work because you don't have to explain that. You can just have something simple in the shot that ties it all together.
So yeah, and it's really not that complicated of a visual to use.
No, it's not at all.
Just a clever part of little storytelling there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's important because, you talked about subconsciousness and subconsciously tricking the viewer. And we talked about John Hunt in 1984, and they used the TVs and the monitors, and the little girl was so influenced by this, and all the people have been so influenced by that daily broadcast, the voice of Britain, the voice of England.
Yeah.
And the use of media, I think that V for Vendetta goes further than just talking about the surveillance state. It goes further than just talking about totalitarian tyranny and governments. But they also go so far as to talk about, the influence of the media, the influence of what's going on around you, the influence of what you're told, and the media lying to you. I mean, Evie even said she's lying. She said, well, how do you know? And she blinks a lot when she is lying. And so it's those little cues that Evie is looking at. It's almost like Evie is breaking the fourth wall when she says that.
A little bit, yeah.
Because she's telling the viewer, like, are you being lied to? What is going on? It's a very subtle, it's like brushing the fourth wall. Right. It's not necessarily breaking it, but it's definitely brushing it.
That's interesting.
And Evie, I think, Evie's definitely the main character in V for Vendetta.
For sure.
On the Wikipedia page, on the IMDb, she is written in as the main actress for the movie. And I think she's awesome in that movie. She shaved her head.
Yeah.
And actually shaved her head.
Yeah.
For this role. And I feel
dedication.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I think it's one of the strongest characters she's played since probably Leon the Professional. Because, she starts out as, I'm just part of the system. My parents were rebellions. They're gone now. I'm just trying to make my way. And she's thrown into this rebellion. And by the end of it, she hits that bomb.
Yeah.
Sets the tracks ablaze and Parliament goes boom. And what I find interesting about that is she was reluctant throughout the entire thing. She was forced into it. She didn't want to be into it. She was forced into it. And that's a really interesting concept with Evie and Natalie Portman. And I'm not going to bring up Queen Amidala because I don't think she was that strong of a character. I mean, you look at that acting and it's not really that great. You look at V for Vendetta or Garden State, you know, her as an actress is absolutely amazing. And I think she was the perfect fit for that because she can play both those roles. She can play the innocent, I don't want to be involved, all the way up through, I'm a badass and I'm going to blow up Parliament.
I think it was really interesting too that they like set her backstory in the movie for her to be like more of an activist and like more of somebody who's willing to do that than she actually ended up being, even though she did it in the end. But her character was almost like the backstory for her character almost gave you a different perspective than what you were seeing on screen. So I think that that's really interesting that you had an actor that could portray that.
Oh, absolutely. And you're right, no, her backstory was her parents were activists. Her parents were part of the group that was against the Chancellor, and they ended up disappearing by the Fingermen. And I'm saying red rum when I do that. She wasn't an activist. She didn't want any part of it. All she wanted to do was go on with her life. And it took some extreme circumstances.
Very extreme circumstances.
For her to really get involved and really have something to fight for. You know, I mean, it was easy when her parents got bagged and disappeared. That's one thing. But actually going through the torture and hearing the story of someone else who had gone through the torture cemented the fact that things are not okay. Like, even though you're okay, it's not okay for everyone.
I think it's telling a bigger message there, too.
Yes.
You know, like, for people to, like, look at their situation and look at what's going on in the world. And, you know, like, you might not be that affected by things that are going on in the world, but there are other people who are very affected by it. So, I mean, I feel like that's the message of that part of the movie is that, you know, like, hey, you know, like, you could be this person who doesn't want to be involved, but then you could be put in these circumstances that the other people are put in, and you would be involved, whether you want to be or not.
Exactly, and I think it's a really, and the whole movie is just filled with social commentary like that, or the surveillance state. You know, we talked about that. We talked about propaganda, the media, the lying media, all of that stuff. And I think it's more relevant now than it was when the movie came out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, especially with like what's going on in the world. And I was watching the movie again because, you know, I had to. It's one thing to watch a movie, and then it's another thing to watch it and try to pick up on all these technical aspects of it. I want to know those type of things, but I actually have to go into the movie with the mindset of, hey, I'm going to watch this movie so that I can learn things about it, like cinematography-wise, as opposed to just enjoying it.
And it can make a movie 2-3 times longer.
Yeah.
Like when I did the character analysis for Sucker Punch, I pause and rewind. What was said there? What was her body language at that point? How well is she carrying that role? And it can make a movie a really, really long movie, but it's what we're trying to do is break down the movie and tell you why it's good. You know, why you enjoyed it, why we enjoyed it. You know, we didn't necessarily go into seeing them at the first. I didn't go into the theater, watch Sucker Punch, and realize all of that. I just thought it was a great movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And then once I start picking apart why is it a good movie, and that's the same with V for Vendetta. I didn't go see V for Vendetta in theaters and say, oh, I'm going to pick this apart. You know, I just enjoyed the movie. And then when you actually get into it, you're like, well, there's a lot of reasons to enjoy this movie. I think that's what makes V for Vendetta a really powerful movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And a lot of fun to watch.
So I wanted to talk about like some of the interesting things that I found out about the movie with the way that it was made and some of the things that were done. So it was shot entirely on film, and it was shot on Kodak film. But the interesting thing about it was that it was color graded digitally. So there were certain elements of it that couldn't be done on film, but they wanted that film look, right? So it was shot with like ARRI cameras and, you know, like a couple different ones. But so they did a 2K scan. So that's an interesting thing about the movie. It's not in 4K. It's in 2K. The digital was a scan off of the negative, the 35 millimeter film negative.
Yeah.
And then they did all the color grading. digitally. And like if you think this movie was pretty old, so this was kind of in the infancy of when they were really like doing a lot of the color grading. So 4K wasn't quite a thing in 2011. So it's a 2K scan, and then V's mask was completely CGI. And it was because the scenes that were lit, the way that they wanted the scenes lit in the movie, the mask was white. And if you would never pick up on this, but the mask has the same lighting throughout the entire movie. Because they want it to be consistent for the character of V. And you couldn't do that with all of the dynamic lighting and like all the different things. So the mask was created, it was basically scanned, like 3D scanned, and it was relit with CGI, like over top of what was on the screen, because it didn't match, like everything else that they wanted in the movie didn't match for what the mask was going to look like.
Dude, that's awesome. I didn't know that. That's a cool little bit of trivia. That makes sense, though, when I think back at some of those really dark scenes.
Yeah.
And it's only the mask that's lit up.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's a powerful image. That's a powerful. It's literally saying V doesn't change throughout this whole movie.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of the reason why I think that they did that, was to give you that impression that V was always V.
Yeah, V didn't grow as a character. V didn't become good, anything like that. He finished his plot, and it was a plot of revenge.
Yeah.
That's really, really, really awesome.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I thought was really interesting was, even though it was shot on film, the movie they overexposed every scene, and they brought it down in post. So they wanted all that detail, and like that's common with the newer cameras, with like digital cameras, like they'll overexpose. And if you think about it, like there's not any highlights in the movie really.
Yeah.
You know, so if you overexpose it, you know, like you can get all that detail in the shadows, and it's going to look overexposed on the film. But then when they went through in post and color corrected it and graded it, they brought it down.
That's a camera trick that I use in the studio if I'm doing a darker shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was one of the things that they did with film, which I think is really interesting. I don't think that there were many movies that were done this way, with the whole shooting on film and then color grading it digitally. So I think that was definitely a choice. And I know I was reading an article that said that the color grading of the movie wasn't done the way that it's typically done. Like it was more done by the director than it was done by just like a color grading artist or anything. Like he was way involved in getting every shot to look the way he wanted. So I think that was really cool.
And I looked into that director, and he does not have very many movies under his belt. I think the most prominent one other than V for Vendetta is Ninja Assassin.
Yeah.
Which kind of has a lot of the same visual elements as V for Vendetta, but still, like, guy had like five directing credits to his name. Why that? I wonder if that has something to do with it. If we're gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, it might be a thing where, you know, he just pours so much into one movie that, you know, like he doesn't want to do it again for a while.
Yeah, he's not cookie cuttering like Michael Bay.
Yeah.
I will make joke about Michael Bay. I may like Michael Bay's movies, but I will make jokes about Michael Bay.
Got it.
So there you guys have it. Why V for Vendetta is a good movie. Now, some of you might agree with us. Some of you might not agree with us. If you don't agree with us, debate us down in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you know right when we upload. We upload 3 times a week. Imperial Nick Me uploads on Mondays.
And I upload on Wednesdays.
And then Fridays, we're going to try to keep up doing this. If we miss a Friday, we'll have a different video for you. Again, we're still trying to figure out the schedule and work out all the kinks of this new channel. Don't forget to check out our main channels, you guys. I'll have the links for those down in the description below. And you guys have a wonderful afternoon. We'll catch you all on the flip side. Bye.